All right, welcome back to the latest episode of the Wedding Capture Co. I'm your host, Chris Spice, and sat opposite me is...
I was jumping like that weird in sync thing we did a couple of episodes ago. But yeah, I'm Tom, and I'm the photographer half, and Chris is the video half of what we do.
Yeah, exactly. And it's been around a month since we've last recorded. So again, like we've been extremely busy. It's been July, middle of wedding season, absolutely crazy. So there's a lot to catch up on. How have you been?
Do you know what? I've had the fear going into this episode. Like, let's be honest, all of you guys have heard the last episode now with the misbehaviour of Max, which really, really bothered me. And hopefully it annoyed me more than it came out on the episode, or less than it came out on the episode, I guess. And also we had a little bit of a saga, didn't we, after we stopped recording. So I'm hoping that kind of all of the drama that we had in the last recording session will be left behind there. And today we're going to have a good day.
Yeah, the last recording session was... we had some bad luck, didn't we, essentially?
Bad luck, yeah. That's one word to describe it. So we had all the issues, obviously, with the needy dog and the rest of it. And then Chris went to go home. I kind of waved him off at my door like a nan to a child down the street. And then noticed that Chris's tyre had a rather large bulge in the side of it. And I was like, yeah, you know, just take it slowly home. You'll be fine. And literally the second I slammed the door, I was like... doesn't sit well. There's something telling me that I need to go and change his tyre. Like if he has a blowout on the motorway or something, this would be bad. So I kind of literally opened the door, and luckily you hadn't driven off yet, and was like, let's change your tyre. So
I had to get someone else to take me to the shoot the next day because I had like a,
temporary
tyre on.
Yeah.
It was definitely an experience. And then
but you didn't die.
Kate got it changed the next day. Didn't die. Luckily, the traffic was really bad on the way back, so I didn't really need to go fast either with the temporary tyre. But so that was an interesting recording session. Obviously, we had the Max kicking off, then the tyre at the end, and it was like, I think we were pretty done by the end of that.
I think, let's be honest about this. I think we both felt pretty defeated after that. And when we listened to the episode back, I think we're kind of like not maybe filled with that super amount of enthusiasm that we had from the others, feeling like, we've nailed it. So hopefully there was just some good takeaways in there from that, and we're wiping the slate clean. That was the first 10. We're into the second 10 now, and things are going to get better, 2. And they're only up from here. That is it. Wedding Capture Co season 2 begins today. So I'm
still really happy with where we've gone with things. I think it's
for sure.
The first 10 episodes have been generally exactly what we wanted from it. There's been a couple of learning experiences, but I think that's always going to happen in the first 10, and now we can sort of mature and get better as we go along for the next 10.
I agree, for sure. And I think it's also being mindful for us. Like, I know we had that conversation of, it's definitely not our best work and, I'm doing this, but I think we've done the right thing in putting that episode out, and hopefully when it goes out tomorrow, isn't it? So it'll go out in real time tomorrow. So you guys would have heard it 2 weeks ago. That with the people, so there will be still some use in there for people, and it's still remembering that all of this is a journey. And the podcasts are out there forever afterwards. And people that join us at episode 50 can go back and listen to the other 49, and there hopefully will be takeaways, which kind of transcend the time that they were recorded. So it's just kind of being brave, because we edit it and we have control over whether it goes out. It's not, it's not like a wedding, is it? Where whatever you make on the day, like we obviously have weddings that go better than others, but you've still got to produce something and push it out at the end, because you can't just go, oh no, the photos are rubbish, you're not getting them.
Yeah.
And it's remembering that with this as well, is that not every recording session, every day at the office is going to be, we're not going to hit a home run, but it is a journey. There was still some good stuff in there. I enjoyed the recording despite the, kind of the interruptions and the tyre drama at the end, and leave it there. So
yeah, I think it is one of those where we've just got to keep sort of trying to improve the small things that happen. Like we've got the tech sorted now. We've got like a lot of ideas for episodes, and going forward we can really sort of start to nail what this podcast is about, sort of thing.
Definitely that, and I'm really excited about today. I actually really enjoyed the first part that we did of this, so I'm quite happy, or quite enjoying of the part to be in the person asking the questions this time, rather than being in the firing line and being the voice of videographers across the nation.
I think it's really interesting. The first episode, it's actually been one of our least listened to, but I think it was really interesting to do, in terms of just finding out how like photographers' opinions on videographers, and the opposite way around as well. I just think it makes a huge difference to know what the other person is thinking, without having to rock up to a wedding and being like, what's this person going to think of me, or what's this photographer sort of, what's their opinion on video. And
I found it really insightful, the things that you picked up on. Like there was things in there that I like, maybe some of the questions you asked weren't things that I expected. Like there are fairly common problems that or conversations that I had between photographers and videographers on wedding days, but they weren't maybe the things that there were other bits that you asked. I was like, oh, that one caught me off guard. So I'm hoping there's a few of those in there today as well, that when it returns to you. If you haven't caught up with that episode was episode 9.
It was episode 9.
Episode 9. So we're labeling it kind of photographers versus videographers, which are kind of, Chris asked me some questions as a videographer to a photographer, kind of the things that assumptions, myths, kind of questions, that kind of posed from one industry to the other, and I'm going to return that back to you today.
Yeah.
So I've got lots of questions here or assumptions that I've made about video, which you're going to dispel for me or tell me are 100% true. Or
it's sort of one of those things that we wanted to open up the barrier of, you don't want to turn up to a wedding, say hello to a photographer and be like, oh, do you really have to do that? So rather than that, we're going to discuss those things here. There's things that you might not discuss with someone you've just met.
I think we said in the first episode is that in a way you're very, very naive, and as a photographer, you are only if you are going to have any length of career in this industry, in whatever guise they're going to end up in going forward, whether they're filming in 2D, 3D, however, is the video is only become more prevalent at weddings.
Yeah.
So there is, if you don't adapt and learn to work with videographers, you're not going to have a very long kind of future in this, or you're going to only end up encountering more problems trying to play nicely with other videographers as the days go on. So hopefully by listening to this, they can we can kind of just say, dispel a few myths, maybe, kind of offer you some kind of etiquette of how it is, or ways that you can work to, play nicely together, and hopefully
it's one of those where I feel like if a photographer rocks up and hates the fact there's a videographer there, either they're going to walk away thinking their photos are rubbish because, the videographer's done this, so my photos are, or they're going to try and work their way around it and not be happy with the way they've worked around it. But if you rock up knowing that the compromises you have to make and things like that, and be willing to make them, then you're much better off. I think you're much more likely to get better shots out of it and a better experience out of it.
And I think, without kind of dropping the bombshell at the start before we go into the other stuff, that if there was a big takeaway from this episode and from the previous episode that we did, is I think the biggest thing that you can go into any wedding with in terms of photo versus video is that mindset that you're going to have to work with somebody else.
Yeah.
If you go in and just want to use them as a tool to blame why things didn't go your way, and sometimes that will happen, that there will be a misline, or just a happy accident where someone will just end up in frame or walk through you at a moment, but don't let yourself get down on that. If you go into a mindset of, today might not be the same as it would be if I was by myself, but I get to work with another creative or collaborate with another creative on this wedding, and you have that kind of, you put a really positive spin on it rather than a videographer's there, all they're going to do is get in my way and be annoying and all this and this, is go into it with a really kind of positive attitude of, okay, they're going to do their thing, I'm going to do mine. We're going to, we can both help each other out. We can both make something which is better than the sum of our parts, if that's kind of...
exactly. I think most of the time, if things happen which are like, oh, why did that person do that? I don't think it's deliberate anyway. There's photographers that I really, really enjoy working with. And I know that sometimes I'll be capturing a perfect moment and they'll step in and I'll be like, do you know what? It doesn't really matter. The experience of working with them is great. That moment passed and whatever that is, what it is. So in the last episode, we went through the best and worst thing.
Yes, we did,
that a videographer had done to you, right? And you mentioned that the worst thing was that someone had told you they were going to stand at the back of the aisle
and then run down,
and then run in the middle of the aisle. I had that happen to me a couple of weeks ago with a photographer who me and you both know very well and are very good friends with, and I was like, I can't be mad because I enjoy working with that person, but I was still I didn't get anything. So I was at the back with a tripod. It was like a Celebrant, so I didn't really have time to change to the gimbal. Back with a tripod, and he was like, yeah, don't worry, I'll stand at the back too. The moment they started coming down, he walked in front, and I was like, oh no, and then walked back, tripped over the tripod, moved it, so I was like, my camera was facing off towards the guest somewhere, and I was like, well, I've got nothing now. But
I feel like in kind of homage to the photographer that did it to you that we spoke about in that episode as well, is you should send him that footage of him in your shot to prove the error of his ways, in the same way that we spoke about the photographer that just took lots of photos of your second shoot at the bottom of the aisle. It's like, look what they did. Look what they did. It's like, you ruined it, man. That's it.
I picked up the tripod. I ended up just holding a tripod and walking back with it, and I was like, I'm not getting... He wasn't in the shot, but I was just getting nothing, basically. But like I say, I feel like most of it is not he never did it to spite me. It's just I think it's a case of, on the moment, some things happen where you got to get in there. For example, dance floor, when you got 2 photographers and 2 videographers.
It's impossible.
It's impossible, yeah. I think there should be some rule against that because it's just mad. I think it gets a bit chaotic, and especially when there's not many people in the dance floor, there's 4 of you gathered around.
I was going to say, it's like summer weddings when you know that most people are going to be outside. Yeah. There's the token couple of kids and probably the bridesmaids on the dance floor. I feel sometimes as a lone photographer, a little bit predatory when you're photographing, you're stood there with your flash, beaming these same people for half a dozen frames, but there's 4 of you doing the same thing. It's
you're all getting each other in each other's shot, but because every one of you needs to get that, you're all there sort of thing.
Maybe we should make like an unwritten like wedding capture call that if that happens, if there are more shooters than there are people on the dance floor, someone has to dance.
Yeah.
That's it. Let's dance.
Yeah.
That's it. It's like you only need one photographer and one video. The other two can just dance together and take photos of that instead.
Yeah.
That's the rule, I think.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It was just the other two are dragging people onto the dance floor.
If there's more staff than there are guests on the dance floor, then say you either need to leave or boogie.
That makes a lot of sense. Rules. Yeah. But yeah, no, I think that's it. Like it's about, you don't take it personally all the time when someone does something basically that might annoy you, but it's just, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's really easy to tell once you've been around that person for any length of time whether they've done it to be a dick or it's a genuine accident, isn't it? And it's not letting yourself dwell on that or hold it against them or or even worse, seek out to sabotage them later in the day. It's like you say, it's kind of let it go and just kind of move on through.
Yeah, I feel like very recently I've been sabotaged a little. I'm not complaining about photographers too much on this podcast, but like it's. When you can tell that someone's not quite happy that you're doing something, so they'll be like, "All right." So I had a photographer that was not happy in me getting involved in the couple shoot at all. So every time I went in and directed, they stood behind the couple, and like it got awkward because there's multiple times I was like, "Can you just?" And the couple were just like looking over their shoulders, like, "Oh my god!" And like I felt awkward for the couple because the couple were getting really awkward because I kept having to ask the person to move. But surely for me, on my point of view, all that does is the couple are there, they're seeing what's happening. Yeah. And if you have to ask that person repeatedly, the couple can see that they're doing it just to be annoying as well. Yeah.
And like
they can obviously see it. Yeah.
We said in that last episode, ultimately you are both there to make the best product for that couple.
Yeah.
And if you by doing that makes your video bad, it's not a reflection on you as a videographer, it's on them for just being a dick. That's what it comes down to, really.
Yeah, exactly. So what have you got for me then?
I've got many of a list here, so we'll see how much of it we can get through. But I feel like again, there's quite a lot, and it's how much you want to expand on these that we go. So the first point that I raise is if a photographer uses excessive amounts of flash, would or could that affect / ruin the look of your film?
So I think it can. Excessive amounts of flash can ruin the look of a film. I don't. I'm in a position now, perhaps it's experience and working with lots of photographers or taking the odd, photography job myself, that I know when a photographer probably does need to use flash.
Yeah.
Most photographers I work with now use it very sparingly, which I quite like. But there are still some where you rock up and there's two photographers, both with a flash on top of the camera all day. And like a moment such as like cutting the cake, they're just, and it's just going absolutely crazy, right? That's obviously going to ruin the look of it. 99% of the time, 90% of the time, I'm not that bothered. Like if you've got to use flash to get the perfect photo, that's just it. It was how the day panned out.
Because as an ignorant person to video, like in the same way you get banding from artificial light, would that be the same for your film? Then you will get those stripes of white where the flashes are going off. Yeah,
but it's barely noticeable, to be honest.
Okay.
Like it'll be like a frame maybe, or like a couple of frames. But the difficulty comes in, like if you've got I don't like the cutting of the cake shot anyway, so I don't know why I'm using this as an example, but it's just from memory, that's a shot that like some photographers like to use a lot of flash on, and it like you just see it all kicking off on the walls. For things like it can affect things like stabilization. So if your shot's a little bit shaky and you're trying to stabilize it with flash, for some reason it really makes it go wonky. And then also where you put your cut as well. So if you cut the video straight after a flash, it looks like you've tried to do like a transition or something and really failed.
Because it's gone really bright.
Because it's gone really bright for like a split second, and it can look weird. So you kind of have to cut it in a different place. But I think while it can ruin the look, I don't think any videographers should be complaining about flashes, and because as long as it's a necessity, it might be just their style and something you have to work around.
That was some of it as well. Obviously, I know that we've had a conversation in the last episode where you were finding that you're being booked with a lot more kind of editorial photographers.
Yeah.
And as much as that kind of like black and white and blurry is part of their look, direct flash during portraits for them, even some of it outdoors as well, I've seen is becoming quite a look with that kind of editorial feel. Like personally, I only use my flash pretty much for cake cutting and dancing. So once you are kind of into the real dark end of the day, that was when the flash would go on. The rest of the time it's sat in my bag under the table.
That's a good point. I've had a couple recently where they've used like direct flash for the couple shoot, and I find that I will shoot in 100 frames. So then all I need is like a second between those flashes to get 4 seconds of footage, right? So I've had to work around that because I definitely don't want to flash in the couple shoot. I don't know about any other videographers, but for me, that's just like something that is quite you have the ability to set that up. So why are you going to include footage with flashes in it, basically?
I think it's like you were saying as well, like Cake Cut's a great example of the dance floor. There are other lights flashing because of the DJ lights or the band lights or whatever. Or you would expect at that end of the day there to be some sort of artificial lighting kind of going off.
Or even to an extent, the speeches, like sometimes it can be a dark room and I'd be like, yeah, you've probably got to use flash here. I don't blame you at all. So you kind of expect that to go off because you can see that it's a dark room.
But to be in a field at 2 PM and someone's beaming you, like it would look more jarring, I think, at that time of day than it would do, say, in the evening. And that was kind of one of the reasons I added that in, is obviously I'm aware that I only use flash at that end of the day, but now it's becoming more common, or a look or a trend of this year. I wondered where that would fit in.
I don't think it's a huge problem. I've definitely seen people complaining about it, but I don't think it ruins the story.
So I guess, is there a conversation to be had in the same way that we were saying that, when you do an aisle walk or a confetti shot, you go to this, if you say to a photographer during a couple shoot, look, if you're going to use direct flash, can you just not just spray and pray? Can you just make sure you're taking,
have a couple of
just give me a couple of seconds in between a walking shot, so that I stand some chance of getting something usable from
100%,
that?
Yeah. I mean, some photographers literally come to me and be like, oh, do you mind if I use flash? And like, in a way, like, that's probably the nicest thing you can do.
Yeah.
Is be considerate. But I always say, like, just crack on, because you're going to need it, basically. Like,
it was quite unique, because I always thought that was a far bigger issue than you've made it out to be today. So something that I was like, well, I'm sorry, I'm using my flash, but it's kind of dark. Where, I know that you can rock at 50th of a second to get thing where if I shot something at 50th of a second, I would be inadvertently editorial and blurry, So
but it works both ways as well. So like, I'll set up lights in the evening on the dance floor. But recently someone was like, can you not? And I was like, well, it's a really dark dance floor, like their DJ had no lights, whatever, so it was going to be pretty much dark, if not. But they had their flashes on their cameras. I was like,
just turn flashes
if you
off,
need your flashes, I need my lights.
Exactly, it's the same thing. It gets that working together, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah.
So okay, so the next point I've got, which is so with AI editing becoming more and more prevalent in photography, do you feel that photographers have it easier than videographers in this respect?
Yes. I feel like there's always been a thing. I don't want to speak for all videographers, but I feel like most videographers feel the same way, is that photographers have it a lot easier after the wedding in the editing process. And I feel like that's always been a thing even before AI, in terms of our perspective, that is. It might not be the case, but in terms of our perspective, that's always been a thing before AI. People like videographers have posted in groups like, oh, I wish I was a photographer so I could get this shoot done, edit done in 4 hours or whatever. But I think now AI is here, the gap has definitely widened in a way that also, I mean, when you look at sort of photography and videography and how much you can get away with charging, I feel like it's pretty similar, but I feel like there's now a lot less hours involved in the post-production process of photos.
I would say that's true.
Yeah. Okay. And most photographers I speak to are like, I don't envy you having to go home and edit this when I can just, even the ones that don't use AI will be like, I don't envy you having to do this when I can just go through Cole and edit in like a day, maybe less.
Yeah, well, interestingly, I used AI sparingly over the last couple of years with the busier seasons. And then this year was kind of like, I've had a slight shift in my editing style. So the first kind of 10-ish weddings of the year that I did, I edited them without AI to kind of really hone in that new style, because in order, if you don't use Imagine or Aftershoot or whatever, you need to give it a bank of edited images to learn from, of somewhere around 5,000 images. So I wanted to make sure that I had 5,000 images I was really happy with, that I could feed it to then make a more updated version of my preset to give it. So I did that, and now that my editing power was starting to creep up bigger than I wanted to, stuff was hitting deadline that I maybe hadn't gotten to where I needed it to be, I was like, literally open the cupboard, hit the panic button on my desk, and Imagine came to the rescue. And in the last 3 days, I've managed to edit 3 weddings, cull it in the morning, AI out over lunch, edit it in the afternoon, it exports, when I'm walking the dog. So that's 3 weddings in 3 days I've managed to do.
So good, isn't it? Yeah. Do you feel happy with it?
Yes.
It's going off topic.
Going into now that I've relearned, I found it a lot more hit and miss last year, but I think there's been a couple of updates to Imagine along the way, which have made it better. Or maybe I'm just more happy with the preset that I'm using, so I've fed it a much more consistent group of images to learn from, that I found that whilst I still go through and have to tweak every image, it is only tweaking, it's not kind of changing the direction of, like, it's got me a lot nearer to where I need to be, in that, of course, within sort of 2.5 hours, I could get through 800 or 900 images.
It saves you time regardless, right?
That's insane, right? I could get eight to 900 images in 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Where normally I used to work at about 100 to 120 images an hour.
Yeah. So any like time saving measure is then like making you more money essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. So there would be an argument if you had that as a permanent addition to your workflow, that you maybe had an argument that you would be able to get out and shoot more, knowing that you've got the robot at home doing the editing for you.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think I've always kind of felt, and maybe this is a wrong kind of myth that you can bust as well, is I've always kind of had this opinion that a photographer's work is done on the day and they have an easier time in the edit, where the photographer, the videographer, their work is done
in the edit. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, the photographer sort of has to shoot for the edit, whereas a videographer can just shoot whatever is happening and then try and piece it all together into a story in the edit. I do agree with that. But that, I think that taking it back to the other side is that widens the gap in the time spent, so that we can make probably less money per day than photographers can now, or per hour, because of the whole AI editing thing, and because we don't have anything like that really to help us through. But at the same time, could that lower the talent barrier for photography? Because there's already a massive saturation because of cameras becoming so easily accessible. Like really good cameras are now really cheap, and so you've got like thousands of photographers and not as many videographers. It's becoming more popular for sure, but not as many. They're now going to be a load of photographers coming in just because they can edit with AI, and it's like a nice lazy job for them, basically.
I agree. I think with every advent of new technology, there was a lot of people out there that were shooting weddings, photographing weddings on medium format cameras, and it was a real craft. And then the advent of digital photography that was the first point of, anyone can pick up a camera now, let's say, stick it in P for professional and go and shoot a wedding. And I think to a degree, that is more possible than ever now, especially when a lot of these AI companies offer pre-built in kind of profiles. So you've not even got to particularly build your own style if you don't want to. You could literally just borrow one of their profiles they have and then kind of tweak that along the way, that you could be using those tools. And again, maybe it isn't a principle thing that I believe that, no, you should build that foundation, build your style before so you are feeding something authentic. But would 99% of your couples know that, that's the pre-saved profile on Imagine? As long as their photos are nice and they're of them, they wouldn't mind. So maybe there is that to it. But I always think in the end that, kind of talent and experience and the rest of it will always kind of come through. And that kind of is more where my price point is reflected in the fact that I have been doing this as long and have seen most weddings and most things go wrong at weddings and most weather types and have learned to deal with it, rather than going, I can make a pretty gallery because 100%. It's edited by AI.
I feel like you say, the money from photography comes on the day, whereas the money from videography comes in the editing. That's my opinion with it. I think like with photography, you obviously have a shorter editing, and probably someone could take some really naff photos and use their own presets and stuff and probably make them a little bit better afterwards. But with the video, like if you've not made that story in the editing, then that's the sort of what it all comes down to, is the editing and the vibe from that. I just wanted to mention as well expectations and how AI has changed expectations. I got an email last week from a couple I filmed a month ago, or just maybe 5 weeks ago, something like that, 5-6 weeks, and it's I shot that wedding with a photographer that me and you both know, and that he uses AI, and the email just said, we've got our photos from our photographer, where's our video, basically. And I was like, oh mate, I know this person who uses AI and like can smash them out very, very quickly. And so my response was, as it normally is, just like, video takes a little bit longer, we've got a bit of a queue, that's what it is. Like, we've got the tracker, so it refers to the tracker and whatever. But I feel like now photographers are able to maybe deliver a little bit quicker. Not all, because someone use AI, but I feel like there's going to be an expectation that video delivers quicker as well, which I'm already seeing this year. And
I think as photographers, we need to learn that, or use that as an opportunity that I know that I've maybe edited, or now have the ability to edit weddings before deadline, is that they could have them sat in the online gallery and still just schedule that send. And I think that you need to wait, like I know a lot of photographers that offer a kind of a express edit and charge for that as well, which I'm not going to lie, something that I'm going to look at now. I've got the ability to turn a wedding around in 7 days. If someone wants to pay me £500 to do that, I will. But at the same time, I think to have I find when I edit a wedding, sometimes it's almost nice to wait 3 weeks to edit it, because you forget anything that you any thoughts you had about the day, or kind of, like we were saying with the podcast last time, if there was any kind of bad, or things that you felt kind of were really bugged you on the day, you've forgotten about them by the time you go to edit it, and you just see the photos that you've taken or the video you've made for what it is. So sometimes if you deliver someone's photos 10 days after their wedding, they've still got certain memories about the day that they're like, and they're looking for those bits. They're not almost using the photo or the video to relive their wedding.
Yeah, exactly.
So even if I edited it quicker, I think I would still have it sat on a schedule send to go out at 4 to 6 weeks later, rather than rush to get it out early to make myself like, oh, I've delivered your wedding super quickly.
I think I was chatting to that photographer about the same thing. I think it's perceived quality.
Yeah.
If someone gets their whole album the day after, it's like, oh, what, they've rushed that.
Yeah, or how much have I paid you to do not a lot of work to it?
Yeah.
Well, they don't know that you've not been working on their gallery solidly for the past 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But because it's taken that long, again, it's a reflection of how busy you are, the time that it's taken. And I think sometimes my couples really kind of value or overvalue that sometimes. Like, you know, you get just wondering, I know you're super busy, and they're kind of, and I think sometimes that you can use your socials to perceive how busy you are. They know that it's summer and it's wedding season, if you like, and all of those things. So I think, it's interesting.
Yeah. So I do think that there's a perception that photographers have it easier, but only during the editing period, I'd say. Okay. And also, I'd love to sit down and edit with the radio on the TV or something.
Always hands on listen to audio. So I feel like one of the points that we brought up in there about kind of photographers having it easier and entry levels feeds into my next point pretty well. So this one says, I feel like Uncle Bob types only ever want to take photos and never video. So you don't really have to compete with guests taking video like photographers do.
Yeah.
Therefore, what you do is more valued in some ways because you're the videographer. Do you know what I mean? Like there's...
Okay. Okay. When I read this, I sort of saw it differently. But so you're talking about because those people will be sending the couple their photos as well. Yeah,
and also you're always going to get, kind of the friend or the people wandering around or Nan with the iPad or whatever, taking some video clips of the confetti or stills. I'm talking about like an Uncle Bob type rocking up with his fancy Nikon SLR and his 70s 200, who's going to sit 4 rows back and it's going to take, again, like we were saying, take all these photos of the couple, and because that's his one camera outing of the week, edits them all the next day and sends the gallery to the couple on the Monday.
Yeah.
Going, oh, look what I've made for you.
Yeah. Okay.
Would you get an Uncle Bob who rocks up with an A7S III and starts panning around and doing that?
No, you don't. You really don't get that, and I do agree actually that it probably, because again the barrier of entry is a bit higher. Like in order to make videos of the quality we would make as an Uncle Bob, you would need probably a gimbal, and you'd need to get in certain positions. You couldn't just sit 4 rows back and do something, because you probably wouldn't get that much as a guest, to be honest. So I guess you would need to put more effort in to make a good actual video out of it. So I guess we don't have to compete in that way. It doesn't, I guess it makes it look a bit more premium having a video, because people can't replicate it who are not being paid for it, like just random guests. I've noticed a lot more recently, I'd say probably 3 or 4 weddings I've had where they've had someone recording the speeches on their phone so they can get it earlier, which is interesting. Maybe that's something I can look into as an extra product or something. But sometimes they'll just record it just because it's a guest. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, the bride and groom have asked me to record it on my phone so that I can send it to them before you guys do, because it's a bit of a wait or whatever. And it kind of makes me think, oh, okay, so that's coming in sort of thing. Yeah. And then I also worked at one where there was literally a guest following us around the whole day. I think she'd been instructed to do so. A little bit offensive. They called her the backup photographer and videographer. So she was taking stuff on her phone and video. So
essentially like these content creator types that we're seeing come into the industry now. But,
so she was acting like that, but I don't think she was actually one of those. But they called her the backup. So I was like, right, okay.
So you think I'm going to lose your footage?
Yeah, literally. Yeah. But I think what it actually meant is we want stuff earlier than what you guys can give it to us. Which I think is fair enough, because we really appreciated our photos from our guests. So,
but I guess that we were saying that, in terms of that last point with the express edit, if maybe there is a way that you could have a thing where, again, maybe it, you come home, literally you can chuck that in a timeline, chuck a lot over the top and get it out, so it is available within literally just the speeches, or just ceremony speeches are available online in their vid flow first, then the highlight comes later or something. If that's the kind of the bit they're looking for, or even they're particularly looking for just for the audio. If you can go, do you know what, I can send you an MP3 of all the speeches tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. I think even just talking that over, I've not thought about that until I just said it.
Neither did I, until I was kind of, we were linking back to the express edit thing. And that links to a point later as well about talking about after sales and stuff. Okay. So.
Well, I've always No, I've lost my train of thought. I've always sent the ceremony and speeches at the very end of the process.
Okay.
Selfishly, because I don't want them coming back to me and being like, we want 1 minute 27 to 1 minute 37 from the speeches in our film. We want this bit from this speeches in our film. So instead, I send them the film and then the long film, and then they get the speeches afterwards so that they can't nitpick bits out of the speeches to put in the film. Because even though, like, that's a nice personal touch, they've got a little bit of control over the film and stuff, I do feel like they obviously don't know how video works. And so every time I've had that recently from a couple who asked me that they got their speeches afterwards and it's like, oh, actually we'd like to change this from in the main film to this and this, and the film didn't make sense after I had delivered it. I don't want to be specific about it, but there was a bit at the end of the film which was just like a few words, and it just didn't make sense in that film. There was like 2 minutes of dancing, and then in the middle there was just like, oh, it's so nice to be able to say a few words, and then it went back to dancing again, and that was the end of the film. And I was like, why do you want that in there? I did it for them, but I don't understand.
But then also when they hire you, they should entrust your integrity as a filmmaker. It's like, you know, watching a movie and go, like, you know, when you go and watch movies at cinema and they're rescored by people, it can change the whole dynamic of a scene, can't it, by just having a different piece of music there. And I guess you can use the words in those speeches to curate what they're seeing on the screen
100%
in a different way that we can as a photographer. You just give them photos, and how they choose to consume it is up to them.
And I'm very specific about that as well. Like I can change the order of things sometimes if like it doesn't quite work out, or I can cut out a sentence if I'm like, oh, that's not great. Or like for a reading, I don't necessarily force myself to use the whole reading. I'll cut bits out of it. So it's just it is more of a control thing. It's in our contract. We tell people straight up front, like we do all of the creative control elements basically.
But it's all of that they're paying for as well. It's not just, you know, they're not just paying for a camera operator on the day either. They're paying for your skills and vision in the edit to deliver them that film rather than and use elements of it. Like I say, once they kind of get involved in that aspect of it, whilst it's them in there, they should entrust you with your skill, that you've picked the best thing of it. And I guess that's it. If you deliver the speed of that first, they know what's there. And I think with any kind of delivery of an image, to get that wow factor, the element of kind of surprise and sentiment is huge. And if that's lost over a quick buck in the express edit or whatever, it's how much do you want to challenge the integrity of your delivery?
It'd be interesting to see how much that changes. I'll probably try it, give it a trial period and see what people say, like see if anyone does come back and be like, oh, can you make sure you include this bit or whatever? Because obviously it just makes the edit more constrained, which can be good because sometimes restrictions are good, but also it can be like, oh, why do you want that in your film? Like that's not going to look good.
But I guess the same argument to be had then is if you know their mate was sat on table number 3 and filmed the speeches anyway, that they've watched that off their mate's phone,
that's a good point.
They could come to you and go, well, I've seen the speeches, I know that I remember Dad saying this, why can't we have that? And whether they've seen your cut or they've seen their mate's cut, the words are the same, aren't they? So you'd think if the level of control was there, it would move across. Anyway, I feel like we could talk about this forever, so we're going to keep moving on. And again, I feel like each point raises something which kind of moves on to the next one. So my next point says, in this content creation age, does it annoy you when photographers film their own clips and post that before your trailer is even released?
Have you seen this before? Because I don't think I've seen this before. Are you talking about what sort of clips are you talking about?
So if I was to go to a wedding, we shot a wedding together, and I say made a reel or something like that with some video footage I took on either my phone or on my camera and made a small reel or even a highlight film.
See, I haven't seen it done in a way that I think you're thinking about. So if it was like a reel, as in like, oh, here's some BTS of me in the day, and then like some shots of you as a photographer, like walking in with your camera and stuff like that, then that wouldn't bother me at all because it's more of like a marketing thing. Yeah. If you got your Sony out, started taking little clips of like, oh, here's a quick clip of the venue, here's a quick clip of some flowers. Oh, while I'm getting you by the window of your dress, I'll get a quick video clip as well. Then I'd start to raise.
Which I know photographers are starting to do.
Oh, okay.
And then offer that as an upsell.
Yeah.
You know, mainly again to couples that don't have videographers. That I can, you know, again, I can take this footage whilst I'm shooting anyway.
Yeah.
No audio, but again, chuck it all together into a 5-minute highlight video, some royalty-free music over the top. This is your like second-rate video.
Yeah.
And that. If someone did that alongside you making a video and then posted it while you're still in the editing room.
So I have in my contract that the photographer shouldn't be taking videos on there. Okay. Like shouldn't be making a video, essentially.
Yeah.
And who knows, like they, you know, they might be doing that without me knowing. So that you crack on, but I haven't seen anyone yet, a photographer that post on Instagram a video before I do. I know this comes down to, it's so hypocritical because like, again, it comes down to the screenshots and like I post and that's that kind of thing. But if I haven't done the highlights film and I saw a photographer post like a trailer from someone's wedding, I'd be pretty ticked off, I reckon.
And I think it becomes a very difficult thing. That, like what I would say, we spoke when we did the screenshots thing is because if I did that, I don't. By the way, I have enough trouble, or enough of my focus is to going into making the best gallery I can for my couples. I barely have time to remember to get my phone out of my pocket to take some BTS, let alone begin to start cutting clips together as well.
I wouldn't worry too much. But
there's less different to a guest, is it, being around? But for me to say, just start to take clips, in kind of with that control and depth of field and stuff that I had from a camera, I could see that would be annoying. Or even worse, me post a highlight and go, oh, actual film's coming from this guy. That kind of is even more difficult because it kind of highlights that fact. But then if I didn't credit you and made it anyway, there's loads of things. Like we said with the screenshots, I said I didn't have a problem with it as long as you were very clear that they were just screenshots from a film. So I'm not trying to do them down, just screenshots, but there's not that level of kind of curation over them or control is that there is, and are great to work with you. I think that's the same. So
No, luckily I've not had that. I do think, again, this might be a selfish thing. I do think if that started to be a regular thing, I would make the expectation to couples that their photographer shouldn't be doing that at the weddings I'm at, personally. Just because I don't, that is very important to me, having that marketing of I'm putting up the trailer on Instagram, that their guests and the couple are seeing that video first. Well, not the couple have already seen it, but their guests and that are seeing that video first when they're sharing it from our Instagram and things like that.
Always very clear that you were the videographer on that day. So if I put out a not so great trailer before and people at the day were like, oh, I saw that video guy wandering around, he seemed really nice and he's made that, that doesn't line up to what I thought it was going to get. There's not even the sound of the voiceover top. They could think that was your work when it wasn't, or it becomes kind of quite muddy, doesn't it?
Because that's a good point. That's a good point.
They could just assume that it was me sharing your film.
I think,
or that we worked for the same company.
If it was good, then it'd be worse because, I know some photographers that do some really good video work, and if they, for example, if I worked with them and then they did their own little trailer and I did my trailer, if it was good, it'd probably be worse, because if it was good and a very different style to mine, they've now got two different style trailers.
Who do we believe?
What
was they actually like?
And if it was good and a similar style to mine, then it's really stepping on toes, and isn't it? And that's really hard to. It's really hard to answer that because I've not had it yet, but we'll see. It'd
be interesting to see if it does become a problem with more. I would like to think that the photographers that are offering it, I would be respectful. Don't see the point in doing it or hopefully they're charging for it, so that the couple would turn around and say, well, I'm not going to pay you an extra this much to make this highlight film because we've already paid a videographer. But I think there's only a matter of time before it happens somewhere, and
definitely
it'd be interesting to see how that kind of gets.
And like I said, the reverse is already happening with screenshots, so there's got to be a compromise there somewhere of, once I've posted my trailer, feel free to post any little random clips you got throughout the day, sort of thing, because I always wait till the photographer's posted
their previews
or sent their previews, not necessarily posted. I'll ask, I say, most photographers I'll ask, have you sent the previews yet? Once you sent the previews, then I'll be like, screenshots go up.
I feel like previews in themselves, though, have only become really prevalent, in the last, probably since COVID. Most, again, or as people were doing volume, gallery waits were getting longer. So to offer that kind of sneak peek or kind of preview thing, I know, I'm far from a kind of a pioneer, but I know that maybe because I came from a music background and they wanted everything now. I kind of, whilst I was backing up, would always send some the next day, mainly as a marketing employee, so that when the couple did their thank you on Facebook, they'd post one of my photos rather than just borrow their mate's iPhone photo until I delivered the gallery a month later. But I think now kind of that's become expected, or the standard in photography particularly, that you would deliver, whether it's the day after or the week after, whatever, they do get some form of kind of preview of their gallery.
100%. And this is something I want to do a little dive into in the next episode. Okay. So a little sneak preview. The next episode is going to be about dealing with backlog and burnout and that kind of thing.
That time of year, isn't it?
Yeah, it's that time of year. And I want to talk about, so it's similar to previews, is that videographers start doing trailers, but giving themselves a week or two to do them. I personally don't do that because I think that would stress me the hell out. So I don't do that. But we'll get into that in the next episode. But I think that's the equivalent is us doing a trailer. And I found that couples, when I was at the beginning of the year and I was doing them pretty quickly after the wedding, couples appreciated them a lot more. And the longer it takes, the less sort of appreciation message you get back, because people are done with the wedding and they've already seen a load of content from it. So my video is not, or trailer is not adding
it's
much.
not the impact that it has
exactly.
the morning after. It's interesting. So next point, mine says, as usually, you need to give the couple more direction on the portrait shoot than the photographer does. Do you think you should just lead it?
So,
and I'm aware this is coming from a photographer that does very little posing and offers very little direction to their couples. So I know that when we've shot together, you've normally had far more opinions, direction needed to go. Can you just stand there and do that? Or I'm like, let's go for a walk and see what happens. So I know maybe I'm not the kind of the standard for photographers across the UK, but in my experience, a videographer would always need to offer more direction than I would give. So I'd be happy for you to take more of a lead in that respect.
See, with you do like to smash it out. Right, so it'll be like 5 minutes, like maybe 10. I'm just like, oh, quick, walk up here, walk down there, quick, turn around and face shot, boom, 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 you're done, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like you need more. That's why I feel like you feel like I need more direction, because I'm then being like, right, now I need to like space and time for this like to happen, sort of thing, or for things to play out. Whether we need more direction or not is going to depend on the couple, like how natural they are with each other. And also the photographer and the sort of poses they're doing, or whether they're shooting 24mm and up in people's grill, right?
Yeah.
So if the photographer's doing like look at the camera poses, or poses where like, I don't know, the groom stood over here and the bride stood somewhere completely different, looking at here, like that stuff just, for me, doesn't work, and I don't think the video works that.
Does it work for anybody? Like, surely the whole point of a wedding is about binding two, or having two people to be together. I've never understood that. For me, there always needs to be a level of connection in couple photos. I always want them to be touching each other.
I know what you mean. Yeah, and I do agree with that. So how much involvement does depend on the couple and the photographer. I think I wouldn't agree that if you had the same style, then the videographer would need more input. I think a photographer would need a lot more input, because like maybe the dress has to be perfectly swished, and like the pose has to be perfect. They can't be like mid-movement or something. So there needs to be a bit more input in terms of photography. With video, it can be a bit more just natural, like, oh, maybe the dress isn't perfect, but she's just walked over here or something like that. So I think with video, I can just be like, have a chat and do the whole thing. Again, so moving over to the photographer, if the photographer is shooting on a 24mm and I'm on a 50 and they're right up in people's grill, I'm going to need to do something, have extra
to get them out of the way,
So I think, it does depend on the photographer, it does depend on the couple. While I like the idea of having full control over the couple shoot, I think that would then lead to completely the opposite happening, and the photographer's feeling like they need more input. So I don't feel like videographers should 100% direct for that reason, is that like if videographers directed all the time, you wouldn't get a lot of these like cool editorial shots that people don't, you just wouldn't get any of that, because there'd be so much movement happening that you wouldn't get like that perfect frame pretty much ever, because it would all be so sort of movement and like documentary style, if you know what I mean. So I do feel like there's a balance to be struck between how much the videographer directs and how much the photographer directs.
So I guess maybe as a point B to that, rather than move on to a next thing, is the idea of someone being a lead rubbish. Like, I've had it before where I've had to work with videographers and they've gone, oh, can you just ask the couple to do this so I can get that? And I'm like, you're stood next to me, they're stood there.
Yeah.
They're your couple as well. You frigging ask them. You don't have to ask my permission to ask them.
That's because not everyone thinks like
If you want them to do something, ask them. It's not like you're not asking the teacher if you can go to the toilet, are you? Like, please, miss. It's like, if you want that couple to do something for your film, which they've hired you to make, then ask them.
Yeah.
Like, I think maybe that we should kind of break down this stigma that, the photographer's the teacher, or, that you should always ask that they should lead. Like, I always said that we are there. I'm there to take still pictures, you're there to take video, but we're still hired to the same job. So that idea that, like, and we spoke about this in the last episode, that there should be, videographers are so far down the list of importance, or this and that. It's like, we are both there to do the same job.
Yeah.
So when we go out, it shouldn't be who wants to lead this? It's like, if we, again, same way that you manage a confetti walk and I'll walk and work together on it. If I go, if we roughly walk in this square loop, we'll get a walking shot there, we'll stop there, we'll stop there.
Yeah.
Along that way, if you need to jump in and do whatever, you should feel comfortable to go, we'll do this, or actually, I want to go to that spot because that works for me.
Yeah.
It should always, in that point, I don't think there should be a lead as such.
No, I do agree. I've literally put that in my notes. I put, we should normalise a method of having it basically 50-50.
Yes, that's it. I'm going to bang the table and really upset the thing, but that's it. Like, the idea of someone being a lead and the other one being a follow is rubbish. It's bogus. It shouldn't happen. You're both there together. Both get what you need. Both have fun.
But again, generally it is expected that the photographer directs, and I don't think...
But why?
It's not expected from our point of view. Well, it is expected from our point of view, but at the same time, most of my couple shoots go like this. The photographer goes, I'm going to do my couple shoot now. Do you want to come? So I come along like sort of, and they're already sort of, oh yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to go here, we're going to go there. So I haven't had any input in locations. This is how probably 90% of couple shoots go for a videographer. We've had no input in locations. They're just taking the couple off already, and like they've decided the time and stuff. And then they'll start posing the couple and stuff. And then for me, I'd sort of set the expectation beforehand that like, if you do a pose or a location, don't break them up until I've had a little go. Half the time they'll go along with that and be like, okay, do you need to get your bits now? Half the time they'll completely forget and crack on and move to the next spot. If I've got enough, I'll be like, that's fine, whatever, I'll take that. If not, then I'll be like, oh, actually guys, can you come back here, sort of thing. So I'm not afraid to step in and do all that, but there is that photographers naturally take the lead, whether that's because they work a lot of weddings without videographers. Maybe that's the
idea that's maybe a bigger point than I think. I always took it from what photographers were here first. Do you know what I mean? But that's not a reason as to why it should be that way. And I think sometimes weddings as a whole are stuck in things of, well, we do this because that's what the people before us did. And it's like we should learn from where we are now. And for me, like, my photos maybe carry a slightly different weight to your video, but they still carry weight. They're still there to do the same thing. It's to document that day and provide people with memories going forward. So why should I have any more? Or you could, like, say you could be going to shoot a video at a wedding with a really, really new photographer. And they could take sort of rubbish places or take ages to do stuff where you could actually be much more of a positive influence on them if they're taking the couple out at 5 straight after dinner in a summer wedding, when if you wait till 8 when it's sunset it'd be better, but they're going, oh, I don't know that. And so there's it's not always, it shouldn't always be about, oh, you're a videographer so you just fall in, where you could find that you are so much more experienced or so much more knowledgeable, or the photographer could learn some from you.
And that does happen. I mean, I turn up to weddings and it's clear the photographer is pretty new and still is like, I'm going to take the couple here, here and here. Are you coming? Basically. And
well, if you go in there, not a chance.
Exactly. And I'd be like, oh, can we just do like a bit here? But that, like you say, it should be a case of not can we? We are doing it because we're both 50. But it's not that way.
The stigma of that shouldn't make you look like a dick to ask that. It should be a no-brainer to go, well, okay, let's do it. Or where do you want to go, or where do you think we should go? And there should always be compromise. I don't understand that, say, this idea of a lead, which in the fact that it's just generational, I don't think it's...
I'll say there definitely are photographers out there, and most of the photographers I work with now I know or I've worked with before and things like that, because they recommend me, or we take jobs specifically because they're the photographer on them, and most of them, because I know them, will then have that conversation before of like, oh, where do you want to go? Oh, where do you fancy going? And that is how it should be, I think, is like you have a chat beforehand, like, how long have we got? What time are we going to do it? What time is good for you? What time is good for you? Whereas I think until very recently, it has been a case of, I'm the photographer, I'm going to decide the couple shoot and where we going, are you coming? Sort of thing. But I do think that's changing gradually.
It needs to, I think. And like we've said before, people have likened this podcast to that chat over dinner that video and photographers have. Then it's a perfect time to talk about it. Going, oh, sunset's looking about this. Looks like we might get one tonight. And even you take 10 minutes and just go for a little wander to where you want to go. And we could do this, do that. You've done your little recce, because any sort of their weight should roughly have an idea or going to have a little look anyway. Is why that can't just be a conversation while there's literally nothing else to do. I don't know, but anyway, I feel like we've put that to rights definitely now. So this one I've written out. As a photographer, I sometimes feel, particularly during ceremony and speeches, that I'm quite limited by my angles, as there are so many damn cameras set up during those bits, and it's hard to either not be in shot or in the way of that shot. So I think I'm always, and I know you said in the past, obviously, if you've got 4 cameras up, there's no chance that I'm not going to be in one of them. But I still think as a photographer, I still feel like, I'm going to stand in the way of that camera. So it feels that kind of like stigma thing. So should we just get over ourselves and not worry about standing in front of your camera, or will that just give a green light to photographers to just be a dick and stand in front of people's cameras?
This is really hard because, I think there is an expectation now for videographers to use maybe 3 camera for ceremony and the speeches. And you've got to understand, the photographers have got to understand that tripods are an essential in doing that. There's going to be, like, if we're talking about in your shot, there's going to be tripods in the ceremony area and in the speech area, and that is unavoidable. Trust me, I wish I didn't have to capture the whole ceremony in the speech. I really do, especially in 3 angles. I wish I could just set up one camera and just put it on the speaker and job done, but I don't believe that's the best way of doing things, so I'm not going to do it. So I've had a lot of people, photographers recently, who I've like spoken to in the morning, and they go, "Oh, the other day I was working with this videographer and they put three cameras up during the ceremony," and I have to go like, "Yeah, I'm about to do the same. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it sort of has to be." So one, I think in the nicest possible way, deal with it. It's gonna be there like for the foreseeable future. We're gonna have like tripods and cameras set up. Two, like you say, we always say to the photographer, we have 3 cameras set up. Usually there's 2 of us manning one of them each. So if you're walking past one, or if you're in the shot of one, in the not like right up against the lens, but in the shot of one, it really doesn't matter that much. You're the photographer. You're a part of the day. Like the photographer is pretty much in every single ceremony, uncut ceremony we've ever done. But if you're like stood right in front of the lens, then there is a bit of a like, oh, you could have maybe just put your camera over the top of that lens or next to. And there's an argument for that. But I always set that expectation of, don't worry if you're in my shot. As long as you're not on like right in front of the lens, we can.
And I guess the one that I've put in brackets underneath this, talk about the reaction cam, I'm going to call it, in front of a couple during speeches, because that's the one normally that gives me the biggest problem. Is that there's become like a trend, or I don't think you've done it so much, but other videographers where they've set a tripod up right in front of the top table with a camera literally probably on like a 50mm just over the top of the flowers. So literally you get the bride and groom in a tight frame. Now, I know other photographers which will kneel in that spot and do the same with a 35mm lens, which is equally as harmful to you as a videographer, because you couldn't be at the back getting that. But also I think in that perspective, as long as you could back that camera off a bit, because sometimes I've had a chance to get no reaction shots of the bride and groom because that camera literally covers their face. Where there could be a way where even if it was 2 foot back on a slightly longer lens, that I'd be able to get an angle somewhere else, or...
No, I do understand that.
Is that one particularly is the one I think, which is the one that I almost kind of feel that the tripod hogs that spot, and there's no, I can't even be on an 85 and shoot through somewhere else without getting the screen and the mic and everything else in.
See, we used to do that, and it really bothered me, because even it would get in our shots, you know.
Exactly.
I would be like,
that's
how
the biggest point. It's in your video as well.
So we used to do that, and it's catch-22 actually, this one, because we'd put that camera at the front and we'd have like it right on the bride and groom and stuff, and like it would annoy me that sometimes when people would move around I'd then have to get my own camera in the shot. So now what we do is and I knew it like wasn't great for photographers either, so now what we do is we try and keep all the cameras sort of out of the way of the top table. So what I have is a camera at the back on like a 10-foot light stand on like a 100mm or something. Perfect. Looking straight at the couple, and then like one at like the front sort of off to the side for the reactions, and then I'll be as far back as possible on my 35 to 150, just getting the speaker at 150 or something. So all of our cameras then are on the outskirts. Is the aim basically. But now we do that, there's that gap has opened up, so now we get more photographer and get to go kneel in it. So I think it's catch-22 is now that shot of the couple from back there has the photographer in it a lot of the time, which isn't the end of the world, but it's still the same as having the tripod in. Does that make sense? So,
I guess again, it's that kind of what the echoes most of this is a compromise with having that conversation to say, look, I've not put my tripod there to give you a chance. Don't be a dick and abuse it and sit in it or camp that spot because you're blocking me as well. And we can both, because I know that I shoot nearly all of my speeches entirely on the 85. And I'm moving because you're capturing either tight shots of the bride and groom's reactions, guest reaction to the speaker. But if you come and stand in front of a speaker at 35mm, you're blocking everybody in the room's view as well. And I think that's the other thing, I think, with the reaction cam. If you set something up which is an eye line to the bride or the groom, they're sat... That's the same eye line as everybody else sat in that room. So if you can't see them, the camera gets a great video of it, but everybody else that wants to see their mate or sister or brother or whatever can't see their reaction either because the camera's in the way. So it's kind of it's also remembering that whilst we're there to do a job, if we're blocking their experience of it, like if you could move in, get a shot, and move out again, that's far more temporary than having a tripod. So, you know, it's like when you go to a gig and you have to watch it on the tall person in front of you's phone because they film the entire thing. Where if you're on the table next to the top and someone's dumped a tripod between you and the bride, and you have to watch her reaction on the screen anyway.
I think also correct me if I'm wrong or overstepping, but I think also it's much easier for a photographer to step in and get that shot than it is for a videographer during the ceremony and speeches.
Because we're much more mobile, where for you to get that level of stability or longevity in the length of the whole speeches, it's far...
Generally, you just don't want to move if you can possibly avoid it.
You want to set 3 cameras up on tripod, leave them to record, and then overview all of them rather than be gimbling around the room, because that would be equally as annoying for guest experience.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's one of those where... I mean, I've had a lot of complaints from people talking about other videographers who are using tripods, and it's just going to be one of those things you have to deal with. One of what I did want to say is I worked with a photographer the other day who approached it in like the best way possible, and I'm sure she won't mind me mentioning her. We turned up to this wedding. She was like, "Oh, you're going to have 3 cameras on tripods or whatever. Where they're going to be?" I was like, "Kate's going to be at the back of the aisle down there, pointing down." And she was like, "Oh, so my first kiss shot is me at the front with the guests behind the first kiss. Kate's going to be in that shot." And I was like, "Right, okay. So where do you want us to get that shot from?" And she was like, "How about then I do the first kiss shot from the other side, where Kate's camera is going to be, and if you're going to be at the front, you can just run out of the way during the first kiss shot."
Nice.
And I was like, "Sounds perfect." Like just like that, it was done. It's really as easy as that. And I don't understand like the whole, "Oh, you sent out 3 that means I can't get my shot." And it's like, unless you want me to...
And I found more and more this year particularly, as long as you're in an outdoor venue or a venue that has sides, so that you can get out from that space behind the registrar's table or where you are at the front and get round to the back in good time, which if you've done enough weddings, you know when that moment's coming, is fine. And I find, particularly at the outdoor venues that I work, or even venues... that's the best place for the first kiss, because they've normally set up some sort of curtain or backdrop or flowers or something, and to have the kind of the guests in between you and the couple for the kiss, that looks the better photo.
Right.
But if you're stuck in in a room where the aisles of chairs touch the walls, that the only way to do that is to come round the table and leg it down the aisle mid ceremony while the registrar's doing their closing words. It's really hard. But then that's for me as someone who doesn't use a second shooter. So if I had a second shooter that was at the back, we both just move.
Yeah, true. Yeah. I find the opposite. I find most photographers want to shoot it from the front now. So a lot of our back angle of the first kiss has the photographer behind. So, but neither person's winning there. Whereas this photographer, when we turned up, we discussed it and we both won because we both got that exact, the same shot, but like we both got a shot without each other in it because we'd communicated beforehand. And I thought it was a really nice way of dealing with things. Just be like, "Oh, if you need to get the first kiss from there, I'll get it from there as long as you can move," sort of thing. We both compromised for each other. And that was the same with her throughout the day. It was a really, really good experience working.
And I think that's the biggest win, isn't it? The fact that was thought of ahead of time to have that compromise, so that it wasn't someone elbowing you during the ceremony going, "They need to move, they need to move." Like, and you knew it. And then as long as you played your part in that, like the guy that didn't for me and ran up the aisle, it's again, as long as everyone did as kind of was planned, it worked seamlessly. And I think that's probably the most encouraging thing out of all of this, is that we do have the foresight to make these conversations.
Yeah, exactly.
And make it easy for ourselves.
The fact that we're both just as important as each other, so I can run out of the way so you can get your shot as long as I'm getting a shot somewhere else. Like,
or also, none of us are monsters. Do you know what I mean? Don't go in with that stigma of they're them and I'm me.
Yeah, exactly.
If you go in willing to collaborate, there's always compromise to be had, and hopefully that person feels the same about it. And I find, and maybe I should be the one that changes, is that I've had enough experiences with bad vicars that I always go into that church expecting a fight.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I always go in expecting to be told, "Be quiet, at the back, no flash," and kind of just be shunned. But I go in on the back foot already going, "Oh, please, mister, can I just stand here and do this?" And maybe some photographers are like that towards videographers, where... And then maybe if you turn around and pleasantly surprised them or whoever, then that would slowly break down. Or if I ended up having the point where I had more nice vicars than bad ones, I'd feel the same way about them as I feel like I do about registrars, where I don't even worry about it.
Yeah. I think that the important thing to note is that like each of us have had bad experience with the opposite. Like I rock up sometimes to photographers who are clearly very defensive because they've probably recently had a bad experience with a videographer. I completely understand that. I'd be exactly the same. So like our aim is basically to win your trust throughout the day. Like I always said this to Kate, like approach it like a new photographer and win their trust throughout the day, because I am there because we're there to capture the same thing essentially. And if we get on, we're going to capture much better stuff. So like I've had times where, like I say, like I've turned up and they've been a bit hostile, and then like not hostile as in anything in particular, but you can tell like,
but just in their approach,
they'll take the dress and just walk away and they'll be like, oh, can I like, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I had a videographer do this, and I'm like, okay, how can we sort of make it so that we have a good experience together? Sort of
I think the main thing is photo and video. We're not all the same.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
Everyone's going to be horrible.
Yeah.
Some people are super lovely, some people aren't. And it's just kind of treating that person. Don't go in with that preconceived thing. Only act that way if that person's like that to you, or try and break it down, or work on that. Rather than go in with this kind of set mindset of it's going to be like this.
I think one of my favourite parts of the job is working with photographers, and I think that leads pretty much onto the next point. Actually,
it does, and I'm aware that we've hit the hour already, so we might have to sort of whistle these a little bit. Okay, I feel we've dived in, so I might go to a little bit more kind of quick fire.
Yep.
So, have you done a wedding before without a photographer, where you've been the only like media like at the day, and did you prefer it? And
so didn't prefer it. Have done ones, didn't prefer it. The reason why is because everyone expected me to take photos. And I'm not that guy who'll be like, oh, I'm going to be really nice and take photos of the couple and send them afterwards, because at the end of the day, like they've physically decided they want video rather than photo. I'm not going to be the one to do extra work because I'm being nice. And I know that might be a little bit bad, but I'm just...
No, but it's true, I guess, because the guest expectation is, because you're the guy with the camera, they expect there to be a photographer, but they don't expect there to be to not be, and you just be video, I guess.
Like, I feel like a photographer would be offended if they turned up and the couple was like, oh, we didn't get a videographer, so can you do a little highlights film for us? It's like, so the opposite way shouldn't be true as well, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
But honestly, the weddings I've done without photographers are smaller weddings, without the couple shoot, without like group shots, and without like a lot of the fun stuff that we set up happening. And I feel like I would rather have the photographer there, bounce off ideas off each other, create an atmosphere and a vibe, than not have it and it just be like the sort of natural documentaries. My stuff is half documentary, but half the setup stuff. And I feel like if you haven't got that setup nice stuff,
or the reason to, do you know what I mean? Like you can go, I'm still going to put some groups together just so I can get some candids of you like waving your bouquets or having a chat, because there's no need for that scenario to happen without a photographer.
Exactly.
So I guess that's really odd.
And I'm like, oh, let's get the bridesmaids out for a video. They're like, for a video.
What you can do to us? Especially as a guy to ask 6 girls to go and walk out in the field.
But most of the time they're already there in that lineup because they've had the group shot, and I'm like, right, now let's do something walking.
Yeah, that becomes a product of, rather than you like filming the group photo, I guess. Yeah.
And like I say, one of my favourite things about weddings is working with a photographer. I know that's a weird thing to say, but like I love that working with a team. I love that sitting down for dinner and having a chat about your life and your job. Like they're almost like colleagues that you don't see every day.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, most people go to work and they see their work friends. We see our work friends once a year and sit at dinner with them.
You never get to choose it. It's down to who the couple chooses. Exactly. How often you get to work with that person as well, which I find
I really enjoy working with photographers.
Awesome. So this one we kind of covered on a little bit earlier, but I said here, as a photographer, I feel it's far easier to add more revenue streams to my business with pre-wedding shoots, print sales, album sales, etc. after, all things attached to where I can make more money besides shooting at your wedding. How and what do you guys do to boost income without shooting more weddings?
Yeah, so I think I can't speak for all videographers, but I think there's a lot of like, oh, let's throw the kitchen sink into our packages. Whereas photographers, I feel like do it better in terms of, because of how things have come along in time in terms of like selling albums and like selling individual prints and photos and things that you can buy off the gallery, and it works like that, right?
Yeah.
Like one thing is the drone, right? So I get a lot of other videographers saying to me, oh, why do you charge extra for drone? Like you could just include it in all your packages and make your films look better. I charge extra for drone because people buy it.
Yeah.
Like I get more money from it. So why would I then make that free? And I get it. Like my films may have an extra bit of production value if I put the drone shot at the beginning of all of them, but I'm upselling it. I'm making more money from it.
But I guess as well, people then expect it. If you have and not all venues work for it. I guess how would that happen then? If someone said to you, I really want the drone, and they're in a hotel in a city. These
same people, then the people were saying to me like, oh, I did a venue the other day and the couple really wanted a drone, but it's next to an airport, so I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I wouldn't have allowed them to buy the drone extra for that to happen, so they wouldn't be expecting it at all. Whereas like they're investing in you or booking you expecting to have that drone because everyone else has had it.
Yeah, I guess.
So yeah, drone, and then also things like keepsake edits or photo edits, which is basically uncut footage but cutting all the junk out, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, so like just all the natural audio, everything like that. We've probably about half or more than half of our couples go for that. And that's another
that really interesting.
15 another 15% ish on top of the package price.
Maybe I should try that as a photographer. Do you want me to fish through the bin and give you all the photos I didn't edit for you?
I know, it's
just
mad.
wrap them up as unedited JPEGs and you can sell them for money.
It's weird because it's like asking, like going to a restaurant and asking the chef for all of the bits that didn't make it into the food. But I do feel like because films are getting shorter and more edited now, that it doesn't. There's a disconnect from the actual what happened on the day. So if I can give them all of the stuff and make it look like the old school wedding films of just someone walking around with a camera, I feel like people have really appreciated that, and it's been really popular.
I know the reasons that I obviously again have spoken that we went in our video about kind of the reason that people have video and that idea of having audio of family members, maybe if they pass on particularly, or just that more kind of the stuff that doesn't maybe make almost like they're looking for bloopers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like I'm sure that you could probably make a bloopers reel out of funny things that happen when they don't make it in, and maybe that's something else that you can offer. People kind of want stupid stuff of their friends making idiots of themselves and make that as
I'll put that in a normal film because that's my style anyway. I guess, like if someone falls over, I'll put it in. Like we did the wedding in was it March or April together?
Yes.
And we did that sunset shoot, and the bride like fell over at some point.
Yes, I remember she tripped over her dress.
I put that in the main film. I thought
amazing.
It's funny, like, and they loved it. So, yeah, I think that's my style anyway. And then things like video albums, which can be tacky, but let's be honest, like I don't do anymore because they're a bit of effort, and I'm trying to streamline my processes and stuff. But you get the little video album where you open the thing, there's a screen inside. Yeah. I used to sell them for 250 quid a pop. They're now like 50 quid to buy.
It's mad.
So if you can still sell them for 200, that's a £200 profit. Like. So yeah, I think there are things. I don't think there's more things for photography that you can upsell.
Apart from speeches and ceremony, videographers don't need to be on it and capturing every moment at a wedding like a photographer does, as you only need so much for a highlight film, whereas expected from photographers to edit and provide everything.
So my first thing is like, why do you think that? What is your experience that's made you think that?
Because you only need like to make a 6 to 8 minute highlight reel,
Yeah.
So you could almost in that to a degree kind of go, okay, well. And I assume that most of your films follow a similar format where you start with a speech of that piece over the front. If you had a drone, you'd have drone footage of the venue to begin with.
Yeah.
And they kind of say, not that you have a set timeline and everyone's running the same, but you have things that work naturally. In the same way that me as a photographer knows that, I do that then and do that then because that makes the day flow.
Yeah.
Is that the film follows kind of to a degree a thing. So if you had, say, a 3-hour drinks reception, my couple would expect there to be candids or more candids in that moment than the other. Where if you say, I know this only makes like 2 minutes of the film, if I've got 6 to 8 clips which are gold from that moment in the first 90 minutes, you don't have to. You can walk around so that if something kicks off, you're ready to go. But you don't need to provide. Like I say, it's not like you say like charging for keepsake edits. It's not like you need to provide a length of film, dependent on how long the day is.
I do definitely believe there's an element of truth in that point that you just made, because if the videographer misses the confetti or misses the big group shot or the dad reaction in the morning, generally it's water under the bridge. Whereas if a photographer missed the confetti or the dad reaction, it's like that's going to be asked for at the end of it.
They know what was there.
And so So I do believe that there's been a couple of like literally 2 times I can think of where I've missed confetti because either I have a card error at the end or like I've forgotten to press record or I can't remember exactly why. It doesn't get questioned because the whole video as a whole it's not a glaring
it is a highlights film.
Confetti.
So they just seem, it wasn't as much of a highlight as anything else in that film, which is why it didn't make it.
Exactly. So, but I imagine if those moments are missed on photo, it's criticised a bit. And the reason I wanted to come back to this point in particular and not skip it is because I do think as videographers, I do see posts in the Facebook group like, oh, I've missed this. Can you help me? There's a couple going to be annoyed. And I just want to say, the majority of time, unless you've missed a significant portion of the day, the couple is not going to notice or care, that you've missed something. And I think that is only for video that you can get away with missing something. I know a videographer that shoots the confetti shot or shoots any shot in any way he wants to. So essentially, like the confetti shot might just be a hand throwing some confetti and like a silhouette of the bride and groom. Whereas I don't think you would get away with just delivering that as the confetti shot for photo.
Not at all.
And I wouldn't do it for video personally, but I think like for photo, you need the whole frame to be like people throwing confetti. You wouldn't get away with just doing like a hand in slow-mo throwing confetti.
Like I find that particularly, like a prime example of that would be the ring exchange.
Yeah.
So I always like to get I have a thing about hands. I photograph hands a lot at weddings, tight shots of hands.
Yeah.
So, but I couldn't get away with in a ceremony. I don't feel I could anyway. Literally just providing 2 or 3 frames of someone's hand sliding a ring on someone else's hand. You still need that pullback shot of them forcing the ring on or saying something whilst holding the ring. So that ties those hands to that and the story
Very
goes
true.
on.
Yeah, yeah.
Where if you in a thing, as long as you've got the words over the top of them going, I give you this ring, the close shot, the hand going on, tick, 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 it's done.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, so I definitely agree with that. On the other hand, though, I don't think that most videographers don't approach a wedding thinking, oh, if I miss this, then it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But I do think that on a day now, if I miss something, I don't really worry about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, I've done everything I can in order to capture that. If it hasn't worked out, it hasn't worked out. Sometimes I say to the bride, look, I can either go and get your guests down there who are all arriving, or I can wait for you to get your dress because you're late, and I'll give them the option. And most of the time, it's absolutely fine. So yeah, I do think we can probably get away with.
Yeah, I think I hadn't really considered this until I worked. It must have been a couple of years ago now. I worked with a videographer, and I won't name names. And he was an associate. He was shooting for somebody else, so he very much had a timeline of the day, but he also had a timeline of the film. And more or less, the photographer he was associating for was more or less like, I need these in these clips. I need like 2 to 3 minutes of candids for this. I need this much of the speeches, or like this much for whatever. So when we got to that lull in the evening, it was like I was like, "Are you not going to stay for like dances?" I don't need to. I've got what I need. Those 3 dances gave me enough. I've got, like, say, these 8 clips of people doing stuff. Good enough. I need that. I'm done.
Yeah, that's it.
And it was purely shot for the edit. There was no like, so if he'd left and then like, the groomsman had rushed the dance floor and started chucking the groom in the air with his tire in his head later, it wouldn't have been in the film. But he was, oh no, I've got my 6 to 8 of dancing. Done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like I do that, but in not such a big way. Does that make sense? So I'm thinking about how I'm editing the film as I'm filming it.
Which I guess you have to.
There's photographers who obviously want to stay till like 10:30, 11 o'clock to make sure they get all the dancing. But I'm thinking there's not more length left in the film for me to get. So what I'm going to be doing is replacing these dancing shots from the songs after the first dance with some maybe a little bit more drunk and crazy ones afterwards, but it's not really going to affect the dynamic of the film or the story. Therefore, I don't really need to stay till 11.
I guess the only way that would happen is if you had a couple, I guess, and you'd have to charge accordingly for this in the same way that I feel that photographers that stay much more after sunset need to charge for being around at that late into the evening.
This year I've had a habit of staying for sunset, but
if you had a couple that said to you, I'm going to book a keepsake edit.
Yeah.
From the beginning, I want that keepsake edit. I want the long footage. I want the footage.
Yeah.
I want you to stay.
Yeah. So we have had a couple of couples book the keepsake edit before the wedding.
Yeah.
But nothing changes.
Or they set some expectation if they were looking for that. They were looking for you to stay for longer to cover if they knew their dance was going to kick off.
It's an upsell. So we charge per hour after half an hour after the first dance is per hour. Yeah. So we've got one coming up, which is they've hired us for 2 hours after the first dance. And I always recommend people don't, because I'm like, you don't need it, but they wanted it. So they got...
I guess it's like the conversations we had back in I don't know what number it is, so don't ask me, but the evening wedding, prepping for an evening wedding, I think. In the summer, unless you were staying late for fireworks or sparklers or something, I would agree that's probably a waste of time because not many people on the dance floor. But if you were an October wedding and you had a band or sax player or something going on in that, there would be plenty for you to cover in the evening. But again, if it's how much of it you're going to use, if they've only booked you for an 8-minute highlight film, I guess. Yeah.
So some people literally like, we'll pay for an extra hour or 2 after because we want some of the dancing stuff. And I say, look at all of my portfolio. No one here has paid me extra. These are all songs that happen straight after. Yeah. If you can lead by example and drag everyone onto the dance floor, you're not going to need to pay me extra. And I know this is like downselling, it's the opposite of business, but I want to be honest with them and be like, most of the footage ain't going to be in it.
Or deep down, if you are shooting a volume of weddings where you're doing back-to-backs or you're out most weekends, you don't want to be there till... physically, if you're going to shoot weddings across the UK, you can't finish in Yorkshire at 11 o'clock and be shooting in Surrey at 9 o'clock the next morning, not without taking care of yourself. So if you know that you need X amount of weddings and that relies on you doing doubles to get yourself away at sensible time with not that much of an impact to the couple's overall film... Why would you push yourself to work 13, 14-hour days when the outcome is very similar to you working at 10 to 12?
Yeah. There are times where I do think I'd have benefited from staying longer. Like the other day, I think the moment I left, everyone left the dance floor, put on like cowboy hats and all stuff like that, and came back on, and it was a crazy party.
This is the curse of leaving.
Yeah, I know.
It's the curse of leaving.
But the photographer's still there, so.
Like, I always feel that if nothing's happening on the dance floor, the best thing I can do is pack up. As soon as my flash has come off my camera and I've put a lens cap on,
you can guarantee there's going to be...
Guarantee that the groom makes a beeline for his mum and drags her onto the dance floor, or something starts going off. The second that I've walked away from the dance floor and start to pack up, and I've had weddings in the past where I've tried to pack up on multiple occasions because I've always gone, I need to capture that and run back to it, and then it's gone dead again. Straight after that moment, it's gone
100%.
dead. Or by the time I've got a flashback on my camera and the lens cap, I've got back to the dance floor, the moment's passed. And then you try and pack up again and something else happens.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes I've been more decisive in going,
sometimes one of those,
I've got enough.
Yeah.
I've got enough. Go and take your gear away in another room so you can't see what you're missing out on.
I saw all those people coming back with cowboy hats when I was in the car park, and I had my bags in my hand. I was like, do you know what?
Did it cross your mind?
Yeah, it did cross my mind. But you could be there all night if you end up doing that kind of thing.
Okay, then, so we'll get to this last point now then. So videography relies so much more on the quality of gear than you use than photo does.
Yes, I do believe so. I think that photo specs in cameras have now matured to the point where if you buy a decent camera, you're like, in 5 years' time, I don't think there's going to be anything spectacular more than that, basically. I think most cameras do a very, very good job. You use a 6-year-old camera, it does a cracking job, and I don't think that you need to upgrade anytime soon, to be honest.
I don't tend to either. Unless it breaks, I'll probably buy the same one that I had before. For me, again, without getting too techie, I use A7 III still.
Yeah.
The one that my number one camera that I'm using is still the original one that I got on pre-order. It is well over the shutter life that's recommended. It's showing all the signs that it does. It's seen things, that camera. It's got more bare metal on it than it has black paint left on it, but it is still an absolute workhorse to me.
Whereas I think the rate that video specs are increasing is faster, so there's much more of an expectation to upgrade your gear. Not just for quality reasons. Obviously, we've just got 4K at 10-bit and 50 frames a second, everything like that in 2020 with the A7S III, but also for quality of life. Like, stabilization is increasing, so as stabilization gets better, that negates the need for a gimbal in some scenarios. Therefore, it makes the user experience a lot easier because I want to get rid of the gimbal. So as that gets better, so I believe there's definitely more of a, if you go more expensive, you definitely get better stuff. Whereas for photo, you can sort of start relatively cheaper, and still get some good stuff out of it.
I think he jumps into that point of entry, like we were saying earlier, with other things. That the point of entry for photography is definitely lower, I think, or for you to establish yourself at a certain price. With, even just entering videography, having to buy 3 tripods, like light stands, mics, cameras, lens, all of that stuff.
Yeah, that was what I was going. Yeah,
it's far more than like say you could go to your local second-hand camera shop, buy 2 cameras, 2 lenses, and a flash, and you're pretty much set.
I'm so jealous of photographers. I rock up with like my massive backpack with like my 7 lenses, 3 cameras, all of this, like massive tripod bag, 2 light stands, 3 tripods, a monopod, and then a gimbal bag and all this. And a photographer sometimes doesn't even have a bag. Like, I've worked with photographers recently, don't have a bag. They literally have the 2 lenses, like the 2 cameras with lenses on.
There was definitely a point, I think, this summer when my cool bag was bigger than my camera bag. I was bringing more snacks and drinks
you're doing it well.
to a wedding just to keep myself in good order and hydrated than the amount of camera gear that I was bringing. It's definitely true.
Yeah, but I think I think there's more expectation to spend more money as a videographer for not just for quality reasons. I think you can make a great film with an old like A6500, which is probably like 700 quid now, and a good lens. But I think if you want to make the best of the best, there's going to be a lot more quality difference as you start going up the price ranges. Whereas I do believe you can probably buy an A6500, take similar photos to what you take with the A7 III.
I guess there's a balance then, like where the equipment that you would buy would be go more in making your life easier, or negate the use of other things at a lower point. Yeah. Where with photography, it's over a want rather than a need. Yeah, but I could upgrade on my 1.8s to 1.4s, and it might make my life a little bit. But how much would the couple actually know the difference? Yeah. For the spend on it, like why would I spend $3,000 to upgrade my 2 lenses? Yeah. That's not going to directly add. It's not going to save me $3,000 worth of time, or make my galleries $3,000 nicer.
There's this whole thing with video, like, when you go to buy something, people will say to me, why are you buying that for? It's not going to make you a better filmmaker or something. It's like, no, but I'll enjoy my job a lot more using it. I bought a gimbal that when I press the lock button, it folds and automatically locks itself. That's a great quality of life improvement, because now I never need to like switch every single lock every time.
If you're spending 2 or 3 minutes balancing that thing, say 4 times on a day, you do that every day. If you add all those times up and then put a cost on your time, you are definitely saving money in doing that or making your life easier.
Well, balancing is slightly different, but you are spending. I mean, it's time, like unlocking it and stuff, and I don't know. It's just quality of life.
You just want to buy a new gimbal, let's be honest about it. You just got to spend it.
I'll never need anything else more than that now, and that's what I think that's the good point to get
Until
to.
When the next thing comes out.
Yeah, true. Yeah. When it can balance itself, then I'll definitely buy it. But no, I think you can. I think you can spend money to improve your own experience of your job, and I think that's a good place to round that.
I think so. Like, I feel like I feel like we've gone the distance with it, but I feel like there's been some really good points in there, some really good kind of myths busted, truths told, and
I've really enjoyed that. It's good to I feel like there's a lot of photographers there's a lot of videographers that listen to photography podcasts and are in photography groups. I don't see a lot of photographers hanging around in videography groups checking out how they work. So it's really nice to give my opinion on, or to say our
you've given the videographers of the nation a voice on the podcast.
Well, that sounds big-headed as hell. But,
right. But it's true though. But like you said, when we did the other flip of it, and I said I felt that I was going to have photographers come after me and be kind of, you're speaking on behalf of us. You've done the same today, but I feel like there's probably more videographers who think like you than don't. If you can kind of use the things that bother you or use the platform that you've had in this to kind of make that easier, I'd like to think that when other videographers rock up to weddings going forward, that conversation of, where should we go to do the couple shoot, or do you want to have some input rather than follow me, son. You fall in. That's how we're going to go. And if these conversations can make that happen, then I definitely feel that we're doing a good job on the pod. Yeah, definitely, and I've really enjoyed it. So good stuff. Well, so hopefully next time we're going to be away from kind of theory again and talking about managing workload throughout the busy season, and so that will come out in the next one. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we both, as I walked in the door today, we both went. Grown. Literally. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to talking about that in the next episode. But first, Meal Deal is calling. It's calling, yeah. That's it. So we will see you in the next episode. See you in the next episode.